Welcome to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken. Shep will talk with some of the smartest thinkers in business to help make you more successful in your professional and personal life. This is Amazing Business Radio with Shep Hyken.
Hello, everybody. It's Shep Hyken here, and we are back with another episode of Amazing Business Radio, and we have a great interview today, and that is Lesley Mottla, the Chief Product and Experience Officer at ButcherBox, and she has an amazing track record of scaling startups and building disruptive global products, and she is unbelievably knowledgeable about customer service and how to create that culture with your team. So before we get into that, a couple of quick announcements. If you have a great story you want to share or a question that you want to ask, reach out to me on any of the social media channels. I'm there, and if it is a question, use the hashtag Ask Shep, and I'll be sure to answer the question either in that social channel, perhaps in my newsletter, on this podcast, or perhaps on my TV show, which is Be Amazing or Go Home. And you can find episodes on Amazon Prime, Roku, Apple TV, and you can go to beamazing.tv. That's beamazing.tv to catch great episodes there. So let's go ahead and get started with this week's amazing interview. Lesley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So you have a great company you work for. I mean, who doesn't love to receive good food in the mail, especially if it's the food we want? I always say, be careful sending food as a gift because you don't know if that person has a gluten allergy or food allergy, of some kind of food allergy, or maybe you send a bottle of wine and they don't drink, for whatever reason. But if I want to subscribe to food every month, I could have dropping in my mailbox steaks and seafood and chicken, and who doesn't love that?
Exactly.
So you refer to your customers as members, correct?
Yes.
And as we talk about the membership experience, I want everybody listening to realize that whether it's a member, customer, patient, guest, whatever you want to call them, this is really important information. The membership experience, I think, is even more crucial because you're looking at renewal, and it's renewal month to month to month, or maybe it's an annual. But when you work real hard to acquire that member or acquire a customer, now you need to maintain them and keep them and get them to keep coming back. And for those that don't have a subscription model, keep in mind that if you ever want to think about this as a repeat customer, well, in a sense, that's like a subscription. It's just not an ongoing every month type of subscription. Maybe somebody comes in 3 times a year, but every time they come in, they've renewed their subscription with the idea of coming to do business with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's start with this concept that you love to talk about called member obsession.
Yeah, I mean, member obsession for us means a couple of things. First of all, as a company, we have that as a core value, along with other things like accountability and relentless improvement. So I think that just shows how important it is to us, that internally we make it something that we talk about all the time.
So it's part of your culture.
It's absolutely part of our culture. And, a lot of companies will say that, but they don't kind of operate in that way. And I do believe that we really operate in that way, in a member obsessed way.
In what way? So give me something specific that you think is different than what companies who just talk about it versus you doing it.
Yeah, I think, first of all, we have a really deep understanding of our customers and the customer experience that they go through, and we really invest in that. So, for example, we measure all the parts of our customer journey. We collect feedback from our members on how we're doing, at each point in the journey and how we're doing holistically as a membership. We also look at things like ethnography and ethnographics. So we'll do things like diary studies where we ask our new members to tell us how we're doing and record how they're perceiving, their first or second box. And so we'll have them do journals and videos and things like that. So we really invest in listening to our members and our customers. And I think that really sets us apart.
How hard is it to get that kind of feedback where you're asking a member to, for lack of a better term, use the word diary? I'm thinking I'm journaling for a company that I buy my food from. I mean, how hard is it to get that feedback? Do you create these raving fans so much that they just can't wait to share it with the world, and that's why they're happy to share this feedback with you?
Yeah, I think, we try to generate a lot of excitement before people join the service. So I think our membership is really, really passionate, and we don't find it difficult to get them to give us feedback. Now, obviously, in that case, we give some sort of incentive for people to participate over a period of time, but we find that people really want to tell us, what they love and what could be improved, and like to share their kind of personal journey, with us with regards to how they're cooking the food and making the food, and they bring us kind of into their homes, which is wonderful.
I love it. So you mentioned you give them an incentive. Now, some people would say that's bribery to get a good review. Is there something and by the way, I would imagine your incentive is, I know you have an incentive if you buy a box, a monthly, you have your regular boxes, your custom boxes, your big boxes.
Yeah.
And I believe you put a pound or two of just ground beef as like a bonus. Is that the kind of incentive for lack of it, you throw them a bone, but this bone has a lot of meat on it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it can vary, but we do things like for life offers and things like that. Or it can, just be a certain amount off your, next box or something, but it really varies.
So do you feel you get true feedback, or is it bribe? And by the way, I don't want to put you in a corner, and I'm not trying to say that, asking for feedback with an incentive. I believe that, hey, your time is valuable. And if you're willing to give me a little of your time in the form of feedback, here's a little something for you. Please make it honest feedback,
Yeah. And we definitely set it up in that way to make sure that, people are being as honest as possible. And then we also, we don't just rely on, I would say, one source of information. So the study that I'm talking about specifically was looking at new members, right? The first couple of boxes and what that experience is like. So we also look at all of our feedback from Net Promoter or our member satisfaction scores. We look at all the open-ended feedback around those early months. So yes, we would use that diary study as very rich feedback, but we would also append it with other information that we have and data that we have as well. And I think that's another way that we show how member obsessed we are, is we kind of use quantitative and qualitative, a good combination of the two, to really figure out where the opportunities are to improve or evolve our overall experience.
In other words, you're using good data and feedback to continue to create a more positive experience and to grow that experience.
Exactly.
Which is great. Yeah. When I was 12 years old, I did a birthday party magic show, and I came home after being paid $16, and my mom said, make sure you write a thank you note. And that was my first customer service lesson. And then my dad said, call them next week after they receive a note, thank them again, and then ask them how they liked the show.
I love
Then he
that.
said, and then ask them what tricks they liked. Really listen. And he said, if you do this enough time, you'll hear about all the tricks that people like, and you'll also notice there's some they never talk about. So get rid of those, replace them with tricks they do talk about.
Yeah, I love that.
And so, I mean, it's the same thing. That's what you're doing. And I mean, I was learning it at age 12, having no idea this is what the biggest, greatest brands in the world do.
Yeah. Well, I think you're mentioning two things that are really important to me as a customer experience leader. One is listening, right? Like that's where you really, learn what's working, what's not working, what people want, because they often can't just kind of tell you directly, right? And the other is thanking your customers. And I think a lot of brands don't do that very often. And I think thanking is, a great tool that can take a brand very far.
Well, I know we're getting off on a tangent. I want to talk to you about thanking customers in a sense. And I want to get back eventually to culture, but while we're on this track, is there something that you do? First of all, obviously you say thank you, show appreciation, but let's say that I'm a customer and I've been with you for months and months, maybe even a year or two. What are you doing to keep me interested in you? To not say, oh, I don't want to start looking at my freezer and notice that, okay, I have 3 chickens in here from the last 3 months that I haven't used. what are you doing to keep me excited, interested, and engaged with your product? I mean, obviously everybody has to eat. And by the way, I did the math. A box of food, you divide it by how many meals you get out of this food. I thought, oh no, my wife and I, we're empty nesters now. Our kids are older. I'm thinking, wow, I could have like 8 or 9 meals a month, good meals, good, quality main courses for a really reasonable period of amount of money. However, what's my incentive to keep me excited about your brand if I'm using your product on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, first of all, it's us really understanding, the different segments of people and who you are, right? Why you're using ButcherBox, what jobs to be done you're expecting from us, and what's important to you, whether it's you want the healthiest proteins. And so for example, we also look at personas, and we look at cooking personas, right? And so if I know that you love to cook, or if I know that you are new to cooking, I can start to build out the experience and provide you extra things that are going to help you be successful with your ButcherBox and with those proteins. So that's an example of something we'll do for customers maybe who are newer to the kitchen. We will provide them recipes and kind of content related to the cuts that they've purchased. So it's more of a personalized experience. If we know you've purchased something, we can kind of help you to create a very successful meals around what you've purchased. So that's an example of something that we try to do to help our members.
That's great. And you mentioned they'll use the word personas. I might have even used that word as well. For those that don't know, personas is really, you take all your customers, you could probably divide them into maybe a half a dozen obvious different types of customers. Those are personas. And then you market to each persona differently. So for those that wonder, what is a persona? That's good. Hey, let's take a short break. And when we come back, I want to talk more about, that culture that you've created. I also really, you've got some interesting comments about, what's happened with the pandemic and inflation and economic uncertainty, and yet you're still managing to put out there a strong customer experience, and why even more than ever that might be what's important. So you're listening to Amazing Business Radio. We are talking to Lesley Mottla, the Chief Product and Experience Officer over at ButcherBox. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Hi, Shep Hyken, your customer service and experience expert, and I'm excited to tell you about my new book, I'll Be Back, How to Get Customers to Come Back Again and Again. Now, this book is packed with idea after idea on how to, just as the title implies, get your customers to come back. In the book, you'll learn that repeat customers aren't always loyal customers. Now, both are great, but there's a big difference. You'll also learn about 10 reasons a customer may stop doing business with you, and 3 reasons you would stop doing business with them. And one of my favorite lessons is a 6-step process for creating an I'll Be Back strategy. Of course, there's much, much more. You'll start getting more of your customers to say, I'll be back almost immediately. Just go to www.illbebackbook.com. Again, that's www.illbebackbook.com.
You're listening to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken.
We're back on Amazing Business Radio talking with Lesley Mottla, the Chief Product and Experience Officer at ButcherBox. And I promised that we would get back into talking about the culture of a business, because the way I see it, if you're going to be a customer-obsessed company or a membership-obsessed company, it's really got to start on the inside. What happens on the inside is felt on the outside. So, Lesley, you have done an amazing job of building a team and creating this culture internally, and I'd love to dig into that a little bit.
Sure. I think one thing that I've learned that's been successful for me is to really try to organize around the customer journey. And I think that's a little bit unique to ButcherBox. So we have teams that are focused on, for example, the join experience, or engagement, or shopping, or order, or delivery. So if you think about the journey, we have folks that are really digging deep kind of vertically in those particular areas and looking at the interactions that we have at those parts of the journey, as well as the people, process, and tools kind of underneath. And those are teams that are also connected with all the other functions of the company marketing and others, so that we really break down any silos within the journey. And then I think the other important piece there is we have people like myself who are kind of looking end to end and horizontally at the experience, and making sure that holistically things are working the way we want, and we're continually evolving and innovating kind of end to end.
Wow. So I'm going to call it paraphrase what you just said. So if you do a journey map, the typical journey map is top line. It's all the interactions that a customer has with the company. And each one of those interaction points, what you've done. And by the way, I talk behind the scenes. There's a number of impact points that drive the top line touch point, right? But what you've done is not only looked at the whole top line, but you said, hey, let's take each one of these interactions and let's put a team of people, whether it be 2 or 3 people. By the way, it's always better in numbers because of the brainstorming and the synergy that people have. Just putting one person in charge of a particular touch point might not be as beneficial as 2 or 4 or 5 for that matter. But so what you've done is you've assigned a team to look at each one of these and constantly look at ways to improve, make it better. Is that what I hear you saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. That's a brilliant thought. Yep.
Yeah. And so those teams are really digging in, again, listening to customers at that part of the journey. They're looking at data and information, and also then looking at our overall health metrics, whether that's member satisfaction or net promoter, and taking the feedback for their part of the journey and integrating that into how they make improvements or how they innovate in that particular area.
So one of the big questions we always get about culture is how do you get people to buy into the culture? How do you get somebody that, is new to your company to all of a sudden, hopefully it's on the front end, you've identified folks, but even though people get in there and, I've got the right person for this job, you've got to still get them to stay focused. What do you do to get the buy-in and sustainability of that culture?
Yeah, we definitely interview for customer obsessed. So we do think about that and look for that in new candidates, first of all. But I also think that making sure your even CEO, executive level team, they obviously need to be bought into customer obsession, right? So that's a very critical piece as well, so that people are kind of hearing, not just from me as the customer experience leader, but they're hearing from everyone in the company how important the customers. I think that's one thing that's important. The other is that we definitely like to make sure that we're telling the customer story. So we have things like all hands meetings once a month where the entire company gets together. And so we're constantly trying to share the story of the member and paint the picture of the member experience. That might be sharing videos of our members talking about the service. It may be the review of those health metrics that I talked about and the trends that we're seeing. So we do try to make it a real part of the communication within the company, and not just coming from me.
Great. So I've got 2 questions. I'm going to ask the first one. We'll go to the candidate that you mentioned that you're hiring for the customer obsessed culture. Do you have, the answer may be no, but I want to, if there is an answer, I would love to hear it. Do you have a specific question that you ask that says, okay, this person gets it?
I don't have a specific question. I really like to make that decision based on what I'm hearing from the candidate. If the candidate starts to bring up customers and the importance of customers and things like that, that's obviously a good sign for me, rather than me kind of prodding them into the customer. But I will sometimes ask about great experiences or poor experiences that they have had just with other brands, and have them describe both of those things to me, because then you can get a sense of how they think about customer experience and the customer, what's important. So that is one angle that I often take with some candidates.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you get an idea of, okay, this was a bad situation. Okay, that's a great story. Well, how would you have handled that? Or did they handle, like, what's your perception of how it was handled? So you get an idea of how they think, which is very good. All right. The other question I have is, you mentioned, leadership. and, for lack of a better term, buy-in from leadership. I would imagine that a truly customer-obsessed company is willing to spend money on tools, whether it be AI or people or systems, processes, to drive a better experience, which means that you've got to go to the CFO or somebody else and say, I need money.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prove to them that they're going to get the ROI on a customer-obsessed culture?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one thing that we've tried to establish, in addition to those health metrics, is the importance of lifetime value and measuring that as a customer profitability metric as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do across those teams that I've mentioned is use LTV as a North Star metric and really understand kind of the proxy metrics that will ladder up to that. So what's the work that those teams can do around engagement or improvements that ultimately will impact lifetime value? So if I can start to take that angle with the CFO, and really present a business case around, it could be a particular opportunity that we have where we need that type of technology, and maybe it's going to, I don't know, reduce calls to the call center, or it's going to increase average order value or something like that. We definitely do try to make a business case, but also a case that shows the improvement to those health metrics for the member satisfaction or net promoter. But I do find that working in the context of a metric that's both what I would consider customer friendly and business friendly, like LTV, for example, that starts to resonate well in making the case with someone like the CFO.
Brilliant, brilliant. All right, I'm going to shift to a completely different topic. I mentioned this just before the break. You're the type of business that during the pandemic probably exploded because people couldn't go out to eat, and you probably also experienced a new level of customer service or experience expectation that customers had. So if you can, you without specifically asking a question, I think you know the road I'm going down. But if you can kind of tell me a little bit about what you did, you probably all of a sudden ramped up in your business probably grew, but so did the service department and the contact center that was responding to needs. How did you maintain member obsession and keep creating positive experiences with this explosion in business? A lot of companies have that problem. They get big and their customer service, just for lack of a better terms, it goes from great to suck.
Yes. Definitely, I've experienced that. Yes, our business really grew significantly during the pandemic, as you mentioned. And like a lot of other businesses, we had to adjust to all the other things that came with that, like supply chain issues and things like that. And I think what happened was, because we are so focused on really understanding the expectations of our members, we didn't stop doing that as we were, experiencing this tremendous growth. So really understanding how expectations were shifting and making sure that we were, accommodating and accommodating our policies and things like that towards that. I think it's interesting. You're probably familiar with the Kano model of expectations, right? Where expectations are constantly shifting. Something that was a basic expectation is now something that, shifts. And so what we found during the pandemic was a lot of that, like delivery, for example. People had really higher expectations of making sure that the delivery was going to show up, when they wanted it to, because they were relying on us, right? They couldn't go to stores and things as much. So things like that, I think, have shifted how we think about some of those expectations. I think the pandemic kind of shifted expectations.
Yep. Were you able to maintain your, for lack of a better term, NPS scores and customer satisfaction scores with an explosion of growth?
Yeah, what we did was really focus on good policies and service recovery. So certainly, like every other business, we had challenges, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. And in my mind, as long as you are, transparent with your customers, if they're calling you or if they have questions, or if there's an issue or something like that, as long as you're really addressing those interactions in a really positive way for the customer, they're gonna feel good about you no matter what, even if like the delivery was late by a day or something like that, right? So we really focused a lot on those customer support interactions and giving that team more support, right, to respond quickly, but more importantly, respond effectively and in very human ways. I think that has worked well for me in the past.
Did you have
and I think it worked well
to
here.
scale up and add more people as a result of the higher explosion in your business?
We did, yeah, we did, and luckily we have that ability, right, to kind of optimize based on volumes.
So now that things have gone away related to the pandemic, have you been able to bring the numbers? I mean, do you feel things are more under control? I'm just wondering, did you have to hire people? And then, because if you mentioned an outside firm, it's very easy to scale out and scale back based on need. I just wondered what the experience has been. I think things are feeling somewhat back to normal. I mean, other than supply chain issues, employment issues, and economic issues, at least we got rid of the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we have, I would say things are definitely, in a like calmer state, right? I guess that's the best way to describe it.
And that's a good thing to look at from the standpoint of, hey, we're in a better place today than we were 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, generally.
Yeah.
All right, we're back.
We've always been very, pretty nimble company, and so I think the pandemic showed that, and even post pandemic, we're adjusting properly to it.
Right, nimble is a great word. We're getting down to the end of our interview, and we're running out of time. And you know what question's coming now? It's that one thing question. Is there one last piece of wisdom that you would love to share with us today before we wrap up? Because this has been great. You've given us insights from a great brand, recognizable brand, who's got a great business model. And the one thing we didn't talk about, and I just want to throw it out there before I ask you the one thing question. This is important. I asked you what made your product different than some of your competitors. This was pre-show when we were just chatting, and you mentioned that we really do a good job of basically you're into a cause, and the cause is natural, healthy, good product, sustainable, all that. Give us a real quick pitch on that, because there's a great stat that we found in our research that 30% of customers will forego a good experience if the company believes in the same cause that they believe in. Well, imagine if that you believe in the same cause and the experience is amazing. You put those two together, it's not like you're unstoppable, but that's a great combination. Give us a quick, 60-second overview on your cause and your mission over there at ButcherBox.
Sure. So ButcherBox really, is a brand that's delivering the highest quality, sustainably sourced meat and proteins to consumers. So that means 100% grass-fed beef, free-range organic chicken, humanely raised pork, wild-caught seafood. And we source these things from partners, with the highest standards and quality. So that's a real differentiator. We're also a B Corp certified company, which is a very much a differentiator in kind of in our industry.
And B Corp means?
B Corp is a certification where you need to meet certain requirements that are, I guess the best way to say it is kind of mission based. It's a series of checkpoints, right, that you operate your company in a certain manner that is more mission based.
Yep, love it. All right, the one thing question. Go ahead, share with us that last nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched a little bit on it, but I think for me, it's always about the best way to think about customer experience and your customer is really to be listening to your customers and also observing your customers to the extent you can, and then really combining that with all the quantitative elements. And I think companies that do all those three things well can really deliver wonderful experiences.
So listen to feedback, get quality, quantitative is listen to feedback, qualitative, listen to their comments. And number 3, watch, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say this, watch their buying patterns, watch their cadence, watch how often they're buying, what they're saying, because you can tell a lot about a customer. Great insights, great advice. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
All right. This is why we call it Amazing Business Radio. Lesley Mottla, the Chief Product and Experience Officer of ButcherBox. Love it. We're going to be back next week with another interview. And until that time, this is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing.